Hello guys, I'm really very excited to release this week's edition of Brain Gist again. I thank you very much for watching the previous releases and thank you for all the comments. I really enjoyed reading every one of them and I encourage you to please keep the comments coming. I really want to hear from you. I want to know what you think about the videos. I want to know what impact it's been making. So for returning subscribers, welcome again and thank you so much for making out time to watch this video. And in case you're watching for the very first time, this is Brain Gist. This is where we talk about everything that has to do with the brain and potential disorders that affect the brain. How can we help people who have brain disorders live a better life? That's what this channel is entirely about. And I want to encourage you to please subscribe so that you do not miss any of the interesting videos that will be coming out of this channel. So today we'll be talking about migraine. What is migraine? I hope at the end of this video you'll be able to understand what exactly migraine is. Is migraine some sort of esoteric medical problems that only doctors and nurses and health professionals can understand? Is there some mystical disorders? Probably you've read on Google or some other social media platforms on what migraine is. So hopefully I'll be able to explain to you today what exactly it is in simple terms that you can understand. Right, without further ado, I'll tell you what migraine is. So migraine is an inherent tendency to have recurrent headaches of some types without an underlying brain disease and in normal conditions. So I've mentioned four very cardinal things about migraine. The first one is there is an inherent susceptibility or vulnerability to having headaches. And when we talk about susceptibility or vulnerability, one of the ways to understand it is to think about earthquakes, for example. When people say there's been an earthquake, there are certain parts of the world that immediately come to mind as areas of the world that are prone to having earthquakes. You think about New Zealand, you think about Japan, you think about Haiti. So these parts of the world are particularly predisposed or prone to having earthquakes. So in a similar vein, those who've got migraine have got this proneness, this susceptibility or vulnerability to having headaches of certain kinds that you can't explain. We think it's got its roots in genetics. We cannot pinpoint a particular gene that causes that. But one thing that proves this concept, or that proves it, is that we found out that those people who've got migraine oftentimes have a relation that's got migraine as well. Either their fathers or their mothers or their brothers or sisters have got a history of migraine. So it tends to run in the family. And that makes us think there is some inherent susceptibility to headaches. Another way to look at it is to think about the fact that there are certain situations in which everyone, if put in those circumstances, will come down with headaches. For example, if you deprive me of food and drinks for the next couple of days, there's a very high probability that I'll come down with a headache. And the same thing obtains for everyone else. But those with migraine do not have to have been put through any of the circumstances before coming down with headaches. So I love the way an expert put it. A headache specialist, he said, those with migraine have got their brain wired in such a way as to generate headaches for no unknown reasons. So that's what it is. And the second point about migraine is that the headaches are of certain types. So what typifies, or what are the things that typify a headache of migraine or the headaches of migraine? So the things that typify them are they tend to be one-sided. So it could be on the right side of the head or the left side of the head. But I must quickly add that this is not true for all forms of headache in migraine sufferers. But at least at one time or the other, the headache would typically be one-sided. But of course, it could be the entire head, it could be the back of the head, it could be in any part of the head, but typically it's one-sided. And that's also the kind of headache that tends to throb. Some of my patients say, oh, my head is pulsing, they say there's a pounding headache, and that's the typical behavior. But of course, in a migraine sufferer, at one time or the other, they can have other forms of headaches. It could be aching, it could be pressure-like. They have various kinds of descriptions or descriptors for the headaches of migraine, but typically it would be a pulsating headache. And some say it's an aching pain, but then as it intensifies, it starts to throw up. Now, there are associations with it. These headaches tend to last for hours, sometimes up to 4 hours if you do not take any pain medications, or could also run into days, either 1, 2, or 3 days. Now, the associations with these headaches also help us to identify the headaches of migraine. So some patients we talk about being very light sensitive or being very sound sensitive when their headaches are going on. So sometimes you see them trying to avoid brightness, bring down the curtains. They want to stay in a very dark place. They want to stay far away from noise or sound. Another classical thing that can happen in migraine headaches is nausea and vomiting. So some patients have this disturbing nausea with or without some form of dizziness or unsteadiness. And some actually have described an interesting phenomenon that when eventually they succeed in vomiting, that their headaches improve. So all of these are what typify the headache of migraine. But of course, a migraine sufferer could have other forms of headaches that wouldn't have these characteristics. And that is where the experts play a role in helping with the diagnosis. So if what I've described today as the typical features of migraine headache sounds like what you have, you could have migraine. But like I said before in my previous video, which I encourage you to check, is that even if you think you've got migraine or a primary headache disorder, it's always good that at least one time in your lifetime you should visit an expert who could be an internal medicine expert or a neurologist or a headache specialist to check and confirm that what you do have is truly migraine and not some mimics, because we've got some brain disease that mimic migraine. So that's very important, and afterwards then you can go home with that diagnosis, and also they can help you on how to best care for yourself if you've got migraine. Now the third thing we mention is the absence of brain disease, and then the fourth thing is under normal circumstances. So those who've got migraine tend to have headaches even if they're not going through any stressful situation. It's unexplained, so they're just generating these headaches. So in summary, migraine is that inherent tendency or susceptibility or proneness or vulnerability to having headaches without an explanation, without underlying brain disease, and in normal conditions. All right, now the other thing that's worth talking about in migraine, and I think the discussion wouldn't be, or the talk wouldn't be complete without talking about, is that patients who suffer migraines tend to have specific triggers. So for some patients, they say, if I don't sleep well, I would have a migraine attack. Some say if I am dehydrated, I get one. Some say if I'm exposed to a very bright environment, I get an attack. Some say if I perceive a very strong smell. Some say if I exercise. So various things, various strokes for various folks, or different strokes for different folks, and that's the way it is. So they tend to have triggers that tend to provoke the headaches. So I hope you've learned something new today. So this is what migraine is. And I encourage you to please Share this video with your colleagues, friends, family. You can never tell whose life you might be impacting positively and helping to improve their lives by sharing this video. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe so that you do not miss the future releases from this channel. So I'd like to hear from you. Please write your comments. What kind of headaches do you suffer? I really like to know. Does this sound like what I've described today? So please enter your comments in the box there, and that's the only way I can know that you've watched this video. So thanks so much for watching once again, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.